This is the third video in the series AI without jargon, and today we're going to ask, is AI going to take your job? There's actually two groups of people that answer this question. One say yes and the others say no. But how can this be? And I'm going to show in this video that both are right. It's all a matter of timing. Now, the people that argue that jobs aren't going to be lost use the jargon Luddite fallacy. So let's explain what that is. Well over 200 years ago in the Industrial Revolution, initially the cotton spinner was invented, and they used water power and later steam power to make that work. This increased production by a factor of 500. So instead of having 500 people, you just needed one to actually run this system. That was later followed by the power loom, where the factor of efficiency was 40. So this actually transformed the existing industry, which was based in individual cottages. It was a cottage industry, and in each cottage the whole family worked on creating cotton or woolen goods. Now, these people were highly skilled and also highly paid. The result was that over a 30-year period, they slowly lost their jobs. It wasn't overnight. It actually took 30 years. And in 1811, they rose up and realized that something had to be done, because they were very upset about the destruction of their own individual societies, and they complained to the government. This didn't work, and under the auspices of a mysterious character called Ned Ludd, these people, who called themselves the Luddites, started breaking into factories and breaking up the machines. This resulted in their arrest and eventually imprisonment, and even some were shot and transported to Australia. So the suffering of these people was real, and it lasted tens of years. It wasn't an overnight thing, but the end result was that after 30 or 40 years of the instruments, the new machines being introduced, there ended up, because of the increased efficiencies, more people in working in the mills, the factories where these new machines were running, than originally were working in the cottage industries. And this is why economists call this the Luddite fallacy. It was a fallacy in the end, but there was suffering in between. Now with AI, it's clear that exactly the same thing's going to happen. And this is why many people, including the VC Mark Andreessen, claim that this is purely going to be another Luddite fallacy. But the reality is they never actually describe the suffering that occurs while the technology is being created and the jobs are lost. They only talk about the end result. The end result is that there are more jobs. And I'll explain why that will be the case even with AI. But the problem is, in this time, is that the level of disruption over about 10 to 15 years will be many times greater than the level of disruption in the Industrial Revolution. And the reason is that it affects multiple industries all at the same time. So you'll have, say, lorry drivers, taxi drivers, you'll have lawyers, doctors, all sorts of groups of people, all affected by AI, and with the ultimate reduction of not needing as many people. This massive job disruption is never actually mentioned by the people that talk about the Luddite fallacy. But in reality, it's very important this time, and much more significant, because you can imagine where the Luddites got annoyed and started smashing up factories. With millions of people out of work in this intermediate period, you're going to get total social disruption, and the government and people in charge need to understand that and try and stop the suffering that will occur. Long term, people will have jobs. They will have jobs looking after the robots, or working with the robots, or interpreting the results the robots give us. And additionally, the governments might themselves realise that they are making more money. The countries as a whole will be more efficient, and therefore might well be making more money, and certainly the countries that adopt AI first will make the most money. So a country as a whole will get richer, and it will be able to dole out that money to people out of work. So overall everyone gets richer. But in the intermediate time, what happens is some people get very, very rich, and some people out of a job are supported by the state. And this might not be a very comfortable situation for people. This sort of thing is already happening, but in a slightly different way. Where, say in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, the local indigenous people are incredibly wealthy. They're probably all millionaires as individuals. And what happens is these people, who aren't large in number, run all the businesses, and the workers in the business are imported immigrants from places like India or Africa. And what happens is they are not residents, they actually go back home after a few years. So what happens is they become like the machines of tomorrow, like the robots of tomorrow. These effectively Indian servants and workers are equivalent to what the robots will be, whereas the wealthy indigenous people just become the bosses and work perhaps a few hours a day, making sure the companies are running properly. This is how I envisage how it will be when the robots are doing all the work for us. And in fact, countries probably will invent some jobs to enable people to have work. And these jobs would be perhaps looking after people, doing art work, and generally having a good time. I do believe that some politicians in the Western countries are already beginning to realise exactly what is going to happen. But they're not admitting that it's AI that's going to take the jobs. In fact, often, like the likes of Trump, say he wants Americans to have jobs, and he's trying to make the jobs more secure, but he doesn't mention the fact that AI is taking them away. He's just the saviour of the jobs for the American people. And this sort of makes sense. It's best not to tell people that it's AI that's going to take their jobs yet, because they might rebel against it. But at the end of the day, AI has to be taken up. It can't be refused because of the Luddite fallacy that in 30 to 40 years everything will be fine and people will be happy. It's just in the intermediate time there are going to be large numbers of people that are unhappy. So what are the jobs that can survive this disruption? Well, obviously I think that the technology jobs themselves, the people that build and program robots, that program the AI, are going to have jobs for some years to come. And eventually, of course, the robots themselves will take over that work because the AI will be able to build itself. But those jobs will last longer. And I do think anyone involved in robotics, in actual building robots, will have the longest lived job type. And that's it for this week. Please like, subscribe, and use the Patreon link if you found this video useful. And see you next week.